your video with us. Anyway, so welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Grace Telesco, and I'm with the Fischler College of Education School of Criminal Justice, full-time faculty member, and really honored to be a part of such amazing, exciting programming that Dr. Kimberly Durham, our dean, and Dr. Tammy Kushner, the associate dean, and Dr. Marcelo Castro, another associate dean, the associate dean of the School of Criminal Justice, are all such great, amazing supporters of law enforcement best practices, and programming like this. So if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be here. So we're live streaming on the Fischler College of Education School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications so this way you get notified when we go live. I am absolutely enthralled about tonight, especially tonight. My guest, Jimmy Shanahan Sensei, retired detective James Shanahan. And we are doing this series it's called Best Practices in Police Community Relations and Executive Showcase, which means it's a sharing of what works. What works. We're not going to highlight what doesn't work. There used to be this saying when I was a cop back in the day. I spent 20 years doing that and retired in 2003. We were just saying before we went live that Jimmy came on a year before me, and we used to have this saying, "Catch me doing something right," because we were both trainers and we both taught in the police academy for many years. And we used to tell our managers, our sergeants, and our lieutenants and our captains when we would teach, you know, catch us doing something right. Don't always catch us doing something wrong. And and so that's what we're really highlighting in this program. We're highlighting what works, catching us doing something right. And so without any further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Jimmy, to Sensei. We call him Sensei because he is in fact a sensei. He is a teacher. He's a teacher in martial arts. We know we share a lot in common. We share not only that we worked the housing projects in New York City together. We foot patrol in the housing projects, and we're going to talk a little bit about neighborhood policing and how that was kind of the philosophy of the housing police and how that worked and what their philosophy was about, neighborhood police. We share that together. We share the fact that we taught together as instructors in the police academy for many years. And we also share martial arts together. We both studied under Kaicho Nakamura in Manhattan, in New York City. It's a style of karate called Seido, Seido, which means sincere way. And Kaicho Nakamura is a big reason why two things happened for me in my life. Number one, that I was able to complete my PhD at Fordham University. Despite working full time, despite lots of things adversities that came my way, and Kaicho was a mentor, a great mentor for me, and got me really from in my mind to the finish line. I don't know if Kaicho would think that, but I certainly think that if it weren't for Kaicho and Seido karate, I would not have completed my PhD in social work at Fordham. And the second thing that Kaicho got me through was 9/11. He was instrumental in that for me. We lost a great member of Seido, a captain in the fire department. He gave his life that day, and all of us who were involved at Ground Zero. I was a first responder also. If it weren't for Kaicho and his mentorship and his teaching and his guidance, I don't think I would have been able to get through it. And he would always talk about polishing and how important it is to polish. That we polish our personalities, we polish our character. And so one of the things that I think policing is going through right now is a polishing, and that's all for the good. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Sensei, who's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then I'm going to ask you a nice springboard question.
thank you. First of all, I appreciate that. You talking about our teacher. We made some connections. You know, we never know what we're going to say. There's no script. There's no. Uh,
Jimmy, you're a little low, Jimmy.
is,
Your audio is a little bit low. So if you could just
is that a
maybe
little better? Is that good?
it's a little bit better. Yeah.
A little
Okay.
bit better. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to talk about policing, community policing. I'm glad that we're talking about the positive because this was a rough year for us in policing. I think we got a little bit more involved with the politicians than the politics. And I think we got foot swept emotionally. We got caught up. There's a lot going on. We all know about this trial that's happening. I'm really going to kind of stay away from that and really talk about the better times and how we're going to get better at what we're already good at. Now, you mentioned the police academy and police training, and I'm grateful that you brought in the martial arts and you men and women of academia and just that whole that amalgamation is really where we are going to get back on track and get us through this. And I want to talk about some of the things that I had the great fortune of being part of. Dr. Telesco mentioned our common background. We were members of the police department, housing police specifically, public housing. I have an extensive library, as you can see. It's one of my favorite books. It's written by Fritz Umbach, The Last Neighborhood Cops. This is all about housing cops, public housing, and what it was like to be a housing cop. You worked alone a lot. You worked in some of the most depressed areas of the city, challenged neighborhoods, challenged populations. And the work of a housing cop, and it couldn't be done by everyone, but it was done by many of us to connect with people. The work that I'm fortunate that I was raised by the generation that went before me. Many of them were not only military veterans, but Vietnam veterans. Many of them were laid off in the 70s during the fiscal crisis. And particularly these men and women showed me how to do police work. They didn't tell me how to do police work. They showed me how to do police work by example, getting to know people before you need to know them, that human connection. You mentioned Kaicho Tadashi Nakamura. His book was The Human Face of Karate. I've been with, and I knew of Kaicho since the, I'm aging myself now. I heard of Kaicho Nakamura in 1967, and I was in practice since the early 70s. Karate, especially in New York in the early 70s, was very rough. It was very aggressive, and it was powerful. There was a lot of injuries. And Kaicho Nakamura, himself being a champion, moved away from this brutal collision-based martial art and brought it more into the core philosophical underpinning of his karate was about celebrating the humanity, the human face, getting people better. The work is really, he says very often, it's technique over strength. So it's really not about power and macho and force and athletic prowess. It's more about technique. And that doesn't mean the mastering the choreography. It's more the connecting with the technique. And so he would say that technique triumphs over strength and spirit triumphs over technique. So it's all about bringing us back to the spirit. And what Kaicho did with karate is I like to think I did with police training.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I'm so glad that you said that, and I'm so glad. What a great like kind of segue into how you're bringing what was originally verbal judo from George Thompson, Dr. Thompson, and morphed into what you do now. So this is really bringing the spirit of martial arts and what it really means as we were taught it from Kaicho Nakamura, and bringing that to policing and to police work. And so it's not about macho, it's not about strength, it's about spirit, and technique. I love that. So,
Yep.
can you talk a little bit more about how we bring that into our communication and effective interactions with the community?
I work off of a platform of a lot of things that were shared to me. I like to talk about cops. My background in teaching cops, I didn't really have much of a background with teaching recruits. I think the New York City Police Department recruit training section is probably the best in the world, and how they're able to take civilians and within just a couple of months turn them into police officers, trustworthy police officers. My work was dealing with the police that were already, I guess, postgraduate, you would, or in service personnel, and people who were going for rank, people who were newly minted as sergeants and lieutenants and even captains. And I trained members of the emergency services unit and the hostage negotiation team. So I really had a connection with some of the more choice elements of the police department. And I also dealt with the in-service officers. And I think the greatest victory for me, I'm not going to call it a challenge, the greatest victory, although teaching hostage negotiators and being a negotiator myself and ESU, but talking to the buzzword that was used by the Bureau of Pathology of the NYPD was recalcitrant. And that was the SAT word of the week, was recalcitrant. These were cops who were really losing their motivation. They were really buying into this fact that they were civil servants. And this was a tough audience. These were men and women that weren't in trouble. They might have had a couple of civilian complaints. They may have been using a little bit of vulgarity, maybe not necessarily use of force complaints, but they weren't connecting with people. They didn't have people skills. They were considered disingenuous. They were, and I broke that down. I like to use alliterations when I teach, and I broke it down to the 3 C's. Now, I'm young enough and old enough to remember corruption in the police department in the 70s, as typified by movies like Serpico and Training Day and American Gangster, French Connection. So when we talk about corruption, then we were talking about graft. We were talking about police officers who accepted money to turn their back on their oath. I'm grateful I wasn't part of that generation. That the department did enormous work at cleansing itself of that kind of graft and corruption. But there's a new corruption afoot now, and I call it the 3 C's. That's cynicism, complacency, and condescension. This is exactly where your tactical empathy and your tactical skill of communicating with people comes from. That complacency. The Justice Department did a brilliant study years ago called the FBI study Killed in the Line of Duty, where behavioral scientists, men and women who are far more credentialed than I am at analyzing the murder of a police officer, were able to make connections between complacency and the death of a police officer. We're talking about absent ambush and assassination, where there's no help for that, an ambush or an assassination. We're talking about conditions where the police officer may have lost control of the subject, and the subject was able to gain the upper hand, either emotionally, physically, or whatever. So that's the complacency that we have to watch out for. And condescension, when I talk down to you. Cops are in the bad news delivery business. I tell cops this all the time. You're in the bad news delivery business. If you want to be in the good news delivery business, deliver pizzas or flowers. But condescending to people, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's all in your delivery. That's your verbal personality. And lastly, it's that cynicism that, cops see some of the worst things about society and people, and stereotypes can be lived out, and it's very, very challenging to maintain your humanity or your soul, if you will, in spite of the fact that you're dealing with people in desperate circumstances and desperate situations, people who may have been betrayed by authority or betrayed by life. And now you show up in uniform, you represent authority in a world that has made it very, very fashionable to challenge authority. And that's where we are now as an institution, to bring trust back to that uniform, so that when the housing cops that we studied, that we imitated, then maybe if I'm lucky, I could say I've become, is that cop, the instant that cop showed up, everything got better. It wasn't cured, but it got a little better. Those first 5, 10, 15 seconds that uniformed officer makes contact with that individual, everything has to get better. So it's really about imbuing trust. And again, I'll get back to alliterations. I like to call this the 3 E's, because when I'm talking to cops and I'm teaching cops, they're not looking for an academic perspective. With all due respect to academia, these are working cops. Many of them have their bachelor's degrees. Some of them even have graduate work. But we're not looking to take this from an academic perspective. It's practical. It has to hit them. They have to get that we're not speaking down to them, that we're not judging them, that we're not here to condemn them. We're here to help them. And sadly, police training has gotten beaten up a lot over the years, unfortunately. So to bring creativity and credibility back to police training is something I invested my career in. That
So,
credibility and creativity. I call it the 3 E's, and I'll swing it back to you. Ego deflation. That's the first one. That's the big one. You mentioned Kaicho Nakamura. Again, I'm going to connect it to Seido Karate. In Japanese, it's called Jiga Osotkiro. Jiga Osotkiro means get rid of your ego. Get rid of your ego. Now, to the Japanese culture, and that's why I brought these swords, because they came back to me, they came back from me when I left Tokyo. The ego, they live for the collective. The individual is really not important. It's what we're doing. So that's the baseline. Ego. Ego deflation. In my class, I try to diagram ego deflation. I talk about ethics, that we want to be the good guys and gals out there. We want to represent the right thing, the right way. And lastly, the gateway to all of this is famously now known as empathy.
yes, yes. So here's the thing, and you mentioned training, right? So
Yeah.
we're both trainers. That's really what we have done in the past and loved. It's a passion, training and education. And I think that the training, I think you're right. I think training has taken a hit, but I don't know if people are understand. Uh, and it depends from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. That's true. From our own personal experience, we can speak to New York, and I can say that, I was a big part of this creation of like over 150 hours of training just on the behavioral sciences, just on, how to interact with others. So was it the training that needed tweaking, or is it that bridging the gap between theory and practice? And I know that in your training experience and expertise, that you did a lot of role playing, that you did a lot of especially in, hostage negotiation. You mentioned ESU. Maybe some of our viewers and some of the people from around the country may not know what that means, but it's emergency services unit. So for all intents and purposes, it's a SWAT team. It's a specialized unit, right? And they're highly specialized, highly trained, and their goal is not to use force. Their goal is to gain voluntary compliance with the minimum amount of force, and ultimately no injury, right? So that means that that's the tool and the technique of effective communication skills. So how do you bridge the gap between theory and practice? I say, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I believe role playing, simulation exercises, that kind of thing over and over again is important. But can you speak a little bit to how do you gain the trust of the community? How do you gain voluntary compliance without having to use force? But if you have to use force that is necessary. But the ego often gets in the way. Our ego gets in the way. So can you speak to any of that?
I use the phrase very often when I taught the class. I said, I use this class to teach the class. What does that mean? that means that what I'm doing to my students, hopefully, is what they're going to be doing to the public. And you mentioned role play scenario training. I'm part of a group that abandoned and walked away from age old pedagogy in terms of training. I've seen role play scenario training done very poorly. Okay, I'm very critical of trainers. I worked very hard to get as good at as I did at this, and I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I was around masterful men and women who showed me how to do this. Role play scenario training. When I open up my class and we talk about role play scenario training, or I during my sort of my preamble, I introduce that we're going to be doing some role play scenario. Immediately, I hear grunts and groans from the audience because very often role play scenario training was feebly disguised as the game of gotcha. And cops resent that. It was sometimes, I'm going to use very, very broad language. Sometimes I saw a role play scenario that was haughty and a little over the top. It was campy. It was farcical. And sometimes I've seen role play scenario training that was almost the antithesis of training. It almost was negative training. People were insulted. They were ridiculed. They were made fun of. And it really got it. We went sideways on this. I'm grateful that when I got involved with training, especially with you mentioned ESU, our emergency service / SWAT and hostage negotiators, we were joined by academics from John Jay College. These were licensed psychologists on faculty at John Jay College. So they provided us with the psychological clinical perspective. I was there, other tenured, experienced police officers with time and arrest records, and we were known to the job. We were the trainers, we were the engines, and we hired professional actors. Now, this was the difference. These were professional members from, this is only in New York, okay? SAG actors, AFTRA actors, equity actors would come in, and they would portray masterfully the symptoms, signs, and conditions, not only of rage and anger, which is probably the easiest emotion to access, but they portrayed bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, borderline personalities, suicidal ideation, and we did a range of scenarios, everything from a suicidal cop from behind the door, barricaded, to a student who lost her laptop and was freaking out and thought her whole term's work was gone. And it was up to that officer to show up and help her through that range of emotion. And that was the skill of role play scenario training.
Yes.
So it really brought it home.
Yeah, I want to try something. We have a group that I love that's here at school, and it's called the Sociodrama Club Stage for Change, and we do a lot of scenarios. Now, sociodrama is different than role play. Role play is more for training purposes. Sociodrama is more for educational purposes. But anyway, I have two of my my great backup team with us here, and we do a lot of this sociodrama scenario work on Zoom due to COVID, right?
Oh,
So I'm wondering if we can give our viewers and our webinar attendees a little taste of what you do, a little taste of what verbal de-escalation looks like. It's one thing to say, hey, this is how you make a pizza, and it's another thing to actually taste the pizza. Because if you never tasted pizza before, you could describe it and it'll lose something in the translation. I'd like to show our viewers what this simulation exercise might look like, if you don't mind. I'm putting you on the spot, and I know we didn't talk about this beforehand, but you're an expert extraordinaire in this. So I know if I throw it at you in an improv way, you can run with it. Can I give you a drunk guy? Can I give you a drunk guy who's weaving in and out of traffic? Can I make you the cop? Can I make you the cop? Can you show us the bad way?
Oh.
And then the right way. So the wrong way and then the right way. Can we do that?
Yes. Let me just jump in there. And that was when I when the curtain came down on my career. That's what I was exploring, showing. It's a very young generation now. They really needed to be shown how to do it, and you had to model it for them. Okay?
Yes.
I guess that's how I realized that I became the Obi-Wan Kenobi in this thing.
Right.
I brought in a couple of young cops, and we would role play, and we would do so you're going to portray the I pulled you over, you're in talks.
Oh, I'm not going to be the one. We're gonna have somebody play the role.
Okay, good.
I'm not going to play it. I'm
Okay.
not going to play it because I think I'd give you too much of a hard time. I don't think you'd be able to get me de-escalated. But anyway, I'm just kidding. So we're gonna get somebody to come on, and they're gonna play the role of someone who is apparently intoxicated, who has been weaving in and out of traffic. You pull them over. They're pulled over. We're gonna show the audience ineffective and then effective.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Sure.
All right, Josh, come on in. And I'm going to just say action, and then Jimmy, you just go for it. You're the cop pulling him over. This is going to be the ineffective way, not using verbal de-escalation and allowing the officer is allowing his ego to get the better of him. Action.
This is easy. All right, pull over. Hey, your license, registration, and insurance ID card, Ace.
We can't hear you. Can't hear a word the drunk guy is saying because he's on mute. Okay. Anyway.
License, registration, and insurance ID card.
Why are your lights so bright, man? Just trying to get home.
Why were you swerving in and out? Have you been drinking tonight?
No, man. Who are you?
Turn off your ignition right now.
I don't know how to do that right now. Why am I turning off my car? Can I go home?
Turn your ignition off right now.
Hold on, man. Just let me go home. I don't know why you're bothering me right now.
Listen to me. I'm bothering you because I have you on video that you were doing 62 miles an hour in a 40-mile-an-hour zone, first of all. Second of all, I watched you. I saw you. I observed you weaving in and out of traffic. So let's start there. Have you been drinking tonight?
No. Drinking water.
Get out of your car. You're under arrest right now.
I don't need to get out of my car, man. Leave me alone. Let me go home.
Get out of your car. You're under arrest.
Dude, turn off your lights, man. I can't even see.
Get out of your car. I'm going to say this one more time, okay? You're going to be well cared for. You're going to be well treated. Get out of your car. You're under arrest.
Oh, man. Come on, bro. Just let me go
Okay.
home.
All right. I'm going to freeze the scene now a minute. And, it's every time I do this with you, Jimmy, it's so funny because you have a hard time doing it ineffectively. I can just tell you that it's so ingrained in you, right? To do it the right way. But couple of things, and Josh, you're gonna just stay in character for a minute. I'm gonna pull some people on that. I'm just gonna call them out. David, can you just come on a minute? Can you tell me what you saw just now that you didn't like? What were some of the, if anything, that you felt was ineffective?
Well, with Jimmy, he was pretty direct, but it came off kind of rude. And with somebody who's intox, that he may not, respond well to that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David. So Jimmy, was your ego bruised a little bit here?
Yeah, I was impatient. What was my character? I was impatient. That's a misuse of, that's aggressive. It's not assertive, please.
Yeah. So, here's the thing. You're a police officer, right? And I think it's important for those who are watching and are attending that if you're not a cop, you can't kind of understand. But even if you were a hallway monitor in junior high school, right? Middle school, and you've been appointed as the hallway monitor, and there's kids in the hallway, and you tell them that they have to go in, and then they tell you, I'm not doing it. Immediately, something happens emotionally within us, right? And is that ego or is that human? What is that when someone challenges us, challenges our authority, challenges or disrespects us in some way, or we perceive it as disrespect? What's the inner workings of that?
All of the above. Where we are, like I said, we represent authority in a world, in a universe, in a generation that feels not only, I think we've blown past the word entitled. It's almost as if they feel it's their obligation to challenge your authority. The question I was waiting for from Josh was why? Why do you want my driver's license, registration? You notice I said I need your driver's license, your registration, and your insurance ID card. Even somebody who's cold sober, that's a little bit more to ask for. So I would not ask somebody for their driver's license, registration, insurance, ID card, and I'll prove to you that it's tactically unsound to ask anybody for that much information. I didn't tell you who I was. I think it would have been important to set the tone of telling you who I was and where I worked and who I represented, so that that would keep me from my ego being challenged, and I'd be working from my authority rather than my personality.
Yes. Good.
And I like to tell cops of all ages and backgrounds is that police work, and I say like life, because it's not just police work. I just want to interrupt myself by saying that the best thing about the training that I've had the pleasure of doing for over 20 years, and I still do today, is this is the part of the training, this is the part of the job that you can take home with you. We're taught since we're academy recruits, don't take the job home with you, and yet we do. I could tell you until my clothes fall off not to take the job home with you. You're going to take it home with you. But this is the part of the job that you can take home with you so that you can build trust and relationships with the people that you share a household with,
Yes.
which we generally make invisible in our police career.
Yes.
Okay? Our kids, grandchildren, our spouses, our partners.
Right.
We make them invisible. We take them for granted. And we wake up one day and who are you? They have no idea who you are. And we treat strangers better than we should treat people that we hold a household with. So
yeah, and that's a whole nother side street that we could go down. But what I want to do is just get back to.
But it comes back to how you talk to people. So
exactly.
I like to tell cops that police work, like life, can seduce you into thinking that you're a lot more than you are.
Yes. 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 And so when someone doesn't respond to an order you're giving, or a suggestion you're giving, or a direction that you're giving, or a request that you're making, it goes back to that Don Miguel Ruiz, don't take it personal. Right? This is not personal, but it's hard sometimes as a human being to not take it personal and to feel challenged. So now for our viewers who are just tuning in, let's say, I don't want them to think that we have a panelist on who's drunk, because that's what it looks like. I know. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take two. We're going to take two, and we're going to see an effective interaction where our goal. And by the way, Jimmy, what's the goal? What's the goal here? Can we send this guy home? Can we say to him, sorry, never mind, we don't want to disturb you, go on your way.
Okay.
Let us know when you get home safe.
No,
do we do that?
And why wouldn't I do that? As much as I probably like, we used to do that, and I'm now responsible for him.
That's right.
I let him drive away intoxicated. He just went through a red light, he swerved, and I witnessed that. And I'm just going to say to him, hey, pal, you're a Mets fan, I'm a Mets fan, adios, I'll see you later. No, this man is going to be in my custody. That's the bottom line. He's going to be taken into police custody. But that doesn't mean I have to insult him. I don't have to berate him. I don't have to strip him of his dignity and his self-respect. I don't have to take his if he's tasking me with vulgarity or language of challenge or insult, I don't have to take that personally. The Japanese word is mushin, no mind, an open mind. It's emotional detachment. No matter what you say to me, it can't have an emotional effect. It can't. It's like an emotional windshield wiper. It doesn't mean I have to like what you're saying to me. It doesn't mean I have to accept what you're saying to me. I have to respond to what you're saying to me. I don't have to react to what you're saying to me.
See,
And
that's it. That's it. Exactly. Bingo. Right. Respond, not react. And that sounds so simple. That sounds so simple, but it isn't simple, is it?
it's not simple, but it's not simplistic. It's not easy to teach. Everybody claims they know that. When I used to, with Lieutenant Jack Cambria, who was my boss in the hostage negotiation team, he brought me on to help him recruit people to come to the hostage negotiation team. That was hilarious because everybody wants to be a hostage negotiator. And I would always ask people, prospective candidates, why do you think you would be a good hostage negotiator? And they all said, I know how to talk to people. That's the obvious answer. We all know how to talk to people. I was always waiting for the answer, I'm a good listener. Anybody who told me that they were a good listener, they got an application.
Yes.
So, yes, common sense is under pressure, and where we work under pressure. So what I'd like to say, without sounding like I'm embroidering a pillow for people when I teach, but a lot of this is just age-old stuff that has been strewn through our lives since we were children. The crazier you get, the better I become. I have to show you what I'm looking for from you. So if you're drunk and you're crazy and you call me all kinds of bald-headed sons of bitches and worse and worse and worse, I can't accept that. I'm saying, sir, are you okay? Can I talk to you? I need you to turn the engine. For your safety, sir, I need you to turn off your engine.
Let's see. Let's play it out. Let's play it out. I'm going to stop my video. Okay, Josh, you're up. So we're taking it from 2. Action.
Good evening, sir. I'm Police Officer Shanahan from the 20th Precinct.
Man, your lights are so bright. Can you turn those off, man?
No, sir. They're safety lights. They're to make sure that we don't get hit by oncoming traffic. Sir, are you okay? Sir, I'm Police Officer Shanahan from the 20th Precinct.
Okay, well, I don't know what that means, man. Can I go home now? What is this for?
Sir, can I ask you what's your name?
Man, I'm just trying to go home. Can I just go home? What? Come on, bro.
Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to turn your ignition off right now. That's the first thing I'm gonna ask you to do. I need you to turn off your ignition because I need to establish your safety right now. Okay?
Why, man? Come on. I don't need to turn them. Come on. Why?
I need you, for your safety, to turn off your engine so that I can talk to you.
Come on, man. Please, can we just talk about this?
I don't mean you any disrespect. I need you to turn off your ignition. Okay? What's your name?
Josh, I live down the street. Come on, just let me go home. I'm right down the street, man. Come on.
Officer Shanahan, I'm going to ask you, sir. I believe you've been drinking tonight. Okay, right now this is
no, I haven't been drinking. Just
this is where we're at, Josh. All right. Thank you for turning off your ignition, Josh. All right. I'm going to have to ask you to step out of your vehicle now, Josh. You have anything on you that you could hurt yourself with?
No, man. I just want to go home, man. That's
Josh, you're in my custody now. Okay, you're under my care and my control now. Okay.
Let's freeze the scene here. Wow, Josh, I know you're a little intox, so you might not be able to answer me effectively. But did you see a difference between the first try and the second?
yeah.
What is the difference for you? Even through your intoxication, what's your perception of what's going on?
He was nicer, so it made me feel at least, or he was at least communicating. I didn't feel like I was instantly just going to get grabbed out of my truck or anything.
Okay. So you felt a little less on the defensive. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And just so our viewers know and our attendees know, Josh, come out of character. You're not really intoxicated, but good job. How did you learn how to do that? Very good. I'm impressed.
The club meets every Wednesday. So
yeah, that's right. Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you for allowing me to put you on the spot. Jimmy, can you talk to that second interaction and what tools, if you can kind of the anatomy of that interaction for us and tell us what were the techniques you used?
I look for breakthroughs. I know I'm against people are resisted. Okay, I got it. Nobody wants to deal with the police. You mentioned 9/11. The months after 9/11, people would walk up to me on the street and talk to me and then say, I've never spoken to a police officer in my life. And I suddenly realized all I've been doing was talking to people, and people really never learned who I was inside of this blue. To them, I'm this blue wall abstract indifference, maybe. But the first thing he complained about was the lights. So I thought he was entitled to an answer as to why the lights were on. He asked me to turn the lights off, and I explained to him that those lights were on for his safety. It always comes back to his safety. No matter how belligerent or hostile or aggrieved or upset or anxious he or she is, I have to anchor my response and my conduct to you through the lens of safety. Because that's the common, you can't really it's very tough to argue with somebody who's trying to help you, who's trying to keep you safe, keep you from harm. So the lights were on, and I just tried to build on that. Josh was in my custody, care, and control. You heard me use those words. You're in my custody. You're in my care. You're in my control. I'm responsible for you. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. A lot of times I use these phrases when I'm on big, massive, emotionally disturbed person's jobs, dealing with somebody who's upset. And generally what I've learned to do is to show cops to use these phrases, not just between me and Josh, because if we know anything about the state of police work now, by now they would be a phalanx of people watching this interaction between Josh and I. I do more acting in police work than I've ever done with the Screen Actors Guild. Police work is the steadiest modeling and acting work you will ever do in New York City.
Yes.
I killed myself to get a SAG card. And all I did when I showed up for auditions is I played either a cop or a criminal, and I just played it the way I played it on the street. You have an instant audience. People are consumed with their belief that if they're filming you, they're going to change the outcome of the condition. How many times as a young cop, Lieutenant Telesco, Dr. Telesco, did people say to you, if you didn't have that gun on your hip, you couldn't do anything to me? How many times did you hear that? Like, people actually believe that because we're carrying a gun, that's the source of that's the source of all our power. It emanates from this thing.
Right. But the only source of power is the radio and your mouth.
Your mouth, your personality, your capacity to show concern and authority, not being an autocrat.
No.
And now people believe that I flip it on people, that people talk about my gun. Well, I talk about your camera. I mean, I think people look silly standing there like voyeurs, like peeping Toms. And that's what we have done with our culture now.
Yes.
Well, actually, if I'm filming you, I'm going to control what you say to me. Well, that's nonsense. Because I'm going to talk to you the way I'm going to talk to you with or without your camera. Because I'm not here to hurt you.
Right.
I'm here to challenge you. I'm not here to bother you.
Jimmy, you said earlier, you said something, and I really want to highlight, underscore it. And that is about dignity. Dignity and respect. Even, and I've said this story to my recruits, to my students over and over again. So please, if you've heard the story already, stop me. But when I was, I don't know, I probably had about maybe 5 years on the job at the time. And I was in Manhattan, I was off duty, and I was in a store. And some guy tapped me on the shoulders. I was like crouched down looking for something on a shelf. And this guy tapped me on the shoulder. And I looked up, and is a very tall guy, very big guy. And I'm not a tall person at all. I'm not going to say I'm short, because I don't have a short attitude, but I'm not a great tall person. And this person was very tall and very big. And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "You locked me up." I instantly, within myself was like, "Oh, here we go. Great." You're not in uniform. You have no radio. What's going to happen here? What's next? And he proceeded to tell me what a transformative experience. And I'm not saying this to brag. It sounds like I am, but I don't mean it that way. I say this with the most humility, that he said that arrest and that night was transformative for him, that our interaction was so life-changing because he said, you treated me kindly. You treated me with respect and dignity. And he, wanted to go on and tell me, share with me how he's in school now. He never got in trouble again. It turned his life around. He apologized for that night. I mean, like, mind blowing, right? And it boils down to that concept of dignity, empathy. Like, how do I want to be treated? And who do I think I am that at any given moment I might not be Josh? And if I'm Josh, how do I want to be treated, right? So you say, okay, wait a second, Dr. T, I call BS on this, because how much nonsense and resistance does a police officer have to take? Because you can't always be kind.
I'm not saying.
Or can you?
You use the word kind. I really don't think I'm not here. You see, the community policing got a bad name because it was tied to glad handing and making people happy and making people feel good. I don't know where that comes from. People don't have, we live in an interesting culture now where people are obsessed with being liked. I challenge that premise on people being liked. I say people don't have to like you, they have to trust you. So if your secret end game is to be liked, work on your integrity. It's not about, you use the word nice, and I understand nice. I understand friendly and affable and buoyant and decent. But I guess I'll get back to treating people professionally, treating people the way, not the way you would want to be treated, because sadly, my experience in the police department is cops aren't used to being treated well. When people talk about police brutality, again, I'm segueing. I'm all over the road tonight with you. I had a great day. We know about police brutality. Okay, I got that. Now, absent the racial component, you want to talk about police brutality, talk to a cop about the brutality that he or she experiences being an employee of a police department. It's really sad how we treat each other in policing. And that spills into the way we deal with the public. And for many, many years, I was very interested in making an impact on how my policing style and my police training style affected the community. And I kind of got away from that. And I'm really now examining how my police training experience can impact the cops, the relationship with themselves and each other. And again, how do you do that without coming off, again, it's so ridiculous how black and white thinking plays into this. And we, many of us, and I speak for myself very often, we talk about how we speak in terms of extremes. Like most police trainers to me are really alpha, and the golf shirt and the cargo pants and the razor haircut and the fancy glasses. And if you come across with a softer approach, you're immediately labeled as a Boy Scout or a professor with the goatee and the patches on the all these pictures are really inordinate. They're really silly. So police training and how to affect how you are seen, how you show up in life. What do people see when they see you? Who are you inside of that uniform? What do you mean and what do you represent? Yes, you mean authority and the color of authority and rule of law. That's there, but you're also part of the community. I tell cops, especially the housing cops, I learned I don't live here. You do. So I treated the people that I worked when I was a housing cop. I almost walked around that housing development like I was interacting with neighbors. And my work was to get people to know me before they needed to know me. Because I have a couple of stories of my own, running into people that I arrested and running into people that needed my help and remembered me. And I was I was gratified by those experiences. A portion of my career was spent in the police union. I was an advocate for the cops. And I held a trusted position in the union of the police department. And very, very often I was called down to civilian complaints and internal investigations involving police conduct, not necessarily misconduct. We're not talking about criminal behavior, but we're talking about an allegation of vulgarity, let's say. And I'll give you just one of hundreds. A police officer arrested this man for dealing drugs, okay, on 116th Street and Lexington Avenue. But the substance of the substance of the complaint was not that the officer arrested this man for dealing drugs, but why did he have to use profanity in front of the drug dealer's 9-year-old daughter? That was the substance of the complaint. So I went to work on these cops saying, drop the vulgarity, drop the tough guy act. Nobody's impressed with the fact that you're a lover of Martin Scorsese films. Stop coming off like you're from Central Casting. You're a police officer. You probably come from a decent family. You probably have a decent home that you're paying a mortgage on. You don't have to come down to people's guttural level to respond to them. You can be that higher example of conduct and behavior. You can do your job without the violence, without the vulgarity, without the viciousness.
So Jim, what if, because we have to, I want to go to the attendees now and see if anyone has anything that they'd like to either ask you or to, embellish upon or have a statement about. But before we do that, and this is very hard to reduce this, when we talk about verbal de-escalation techniques and we talk about effective communication with others, if there's a takeaway, what would it be? Is it about ego? Is it about empathy? Is it about respond, don't react? What would be the takeaways that you would leave our viewers with?
I don't have the right to make you feel wrong.
Could you say that again? That was a little low.
I don't have the right to make you feel wrong. I have the right to take you into custody if you're in violation. I have probable cause, a reasonable suspicion. Yes, I'm taking you into custody. I don't have the right to strip you of your dignity and your self-respect. I don't have the right to make you feel wrong.
Excellent. Excellent. I love that. And you know what? I mean, I know that these concepts, we could go hours and hours on this. And in fact, isn't it true that the hostage negotiating course is how long?
Oh, it's for the rest of your career. The class itself is a 2-week class.
It's a 2-week class, but it's the rest of your career applying those principles.
That's just to get you to wear the windbreaker, to get you on the roster.
Exactly. And as we know in hostage negotiating, the ultimate goal there is not force. The ultimate goal is again the voluntary compliance to the maintaining of safety of all, and especially if there's a hostage involved, you want to be really careful not to escalate. Okay.
If I were to write a thesis, which I won't, I just don't have it would be the criminalization of the mentally ill and the demonization of the police in the process. Now, again, I hearken back to the Eleanor Bumpers case, which started this whole odyssey off for all of us with the role play scenario training. We abandoned lecture-based training in favor of role play scenario training, interactive and integrated, meaning we brought in subject matter experts from within the department and from outside to really get cops to get how to deal with people, how to work them through their range of emotion. And you mentioned hostages, the hostage negotiation team, yes, but it's really about crisis intervention and dealing with people who are mentally ill, danger to themselves and others. And what we're doing with the training is sometimes we create a false impression that we can negotiate with a person who is schizophrenic. And in the classroom, yes, we play out the schizo. The truth be told, you can't talk to a person who's clinically mentally ill, not angry or upset or drunk, but
but someone who's experiencing hallucinations, etc. It's absolutely not, you can't negotiate with that. But, I'm just in the interest of time, Jimmy, I'm gonna interrupt a minute and say you really brought up another great takeaway, and that is that crisis intervention is really what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
right? And that effective communication hinges on your ability as a cop, as an officer, to understand that when you stop Josh,
Yeah.
he's in crisis now. Like when I see the police in my rear view mirror, even today, when I first moved down here from New York, like I didn't get school zones. Like I didn't understand that. I didn't understand 15 miles an hour. I didn't understand that the car even went to 15 miles an hour. Like I didn't even realize that you could actually get it down to 15. But
Yeah.
and I've got stopped. I got stopped by the local police, and when you see the police in your rearview mirror pulling you over, your heart starts going, and you're in that fight flight is stress. It's a stressor, and you're in crisis. And so I love that you bring up crisis intervention as sort of that some kind of philosophy that's kind of hanging there. Your goal in crisis intervention, by the way, psychological first aid, restore dignity, power, and security. Let them know they're safe. You're safe. You're safe with me. Unfortunately, some of the cases we've seen, and I don't want to highlight them, but I just want to say that safety was not maybe in the forefront there. Maybe there was some ego there. I don't know. I don't like to Monday morning quarterback any of these cases, but I want to highlight again the best practice. So we're running out of time. I want to ask if any of the attendees, or the panelists for that matter, who I've given panelist privileges to, would like to say anything. If you do, if you want to, if you have a question or a comment, a thought or a doubt, a suggestion or a concern, raise your hand. Raise your hand and I'll give you mic privileges. If you're already a panelist with co-host privileges, you can just go ahead and start to talk. If not, forever hold your peace. Anybody? Let's see. Look at the attendees and look at the panelists. Nobody has their hand up. Yes, we do. We have one person put their hand down. What happened? Somebody had their hand up. Don't get shy. Is it Caleb? Did Caleb have his hand up? Or Mike or Yannick or Alyssa? Anyone? No? I see a 305 number coming in here. Anybody have any comments that they'd like to say? I want to make sure that you get that opportunity to share. David, go ahead. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Jimmy. Quick question for you. Now it seems like it's harder than ever to be a police officer, especially with a lot of, and I'm not going to bring race and all that into it, just the disrespect of the general public with everything going on. So how do you maintain your composure and just kill them with kindness? Because for me, that's kind of a hard thing to do.
Well, I don't know if I'm trying to kill anybody with anything, including kindness. The crazier you get, the better I'll become. I'm not going to be affected by your words, your hostility, your narrative, no matter how well you rehearsed it all night in the mirror. Yeah, people are really, really getting caught up with their challenge the authority. They're dehumanizing policing. Like I said in my opening, it was a tough year. I had to. I'm fortunate. I'm married to a psychotherapist, so I was able to unpack. I'm a civilian now. I'm out of the job. I don't live in New York any longer. Yeah, I'm looking at cops. I'm watching them, and I see that they're moving through it. The smart cops are getting that it's not personal. I think a lot of cops are disappointed with a lot of things that people are saying about them, the generalizations, the stereotyping. I'm from the 70s when I was taught don't stereotype, and yet I see signs, all cops are bastards. Yeah, that's a tough one. All cops are bastards. Wow, I'd say some. Yeah, I worked with a few. I worked with a couple of miserable people in my career. I worked with a couple of people in my career. I wonder how they came on this job. I really do. They really weren't cut out for this job. They really weren't. And
well, and Jimmy, I think that in terms of painting broad brush strokes on anything, on anyone, on any group is missing the point about the complexity of human nature and human beings. but I also think I don't want our viewers to walk away thinking that there's not room for improvement in policing, that there's not the reaction versus the response, that there's not the disrespect versus respect, like, and that there is inherent racism that is systemic, implicit bias. These things are real, and they affect and injure groups of people. So I don't want to, like, paint this like Disneyland thing that, oh, we're all so wonderful. I know I'm wonderful. I know you're wonderful, but not everybody's wonderful. And that goes all ways. Yes?
I'm a work in progress. It gets back to the martial arts.
Yes.
You get that black belt wrapped around your waist, you immediately, boy, you think, and it's just, you went from the top of one heap to the bottom of the other. I used to say in my class that the relationship between a cop and a captain is no different than the relationship between a captain and a chief. So if you think that rank and assignment and is going to inflate your ego, it's about who did you help today? And I could speak briefly. You mentioned Captain Pat Brown. He changed my life. The fire captain, one of the highest decorated captains in the fire department. He had more medals than he had shopping bags full of medals. One night his firehouse was around the corner from my police station, PSA 6 on 143rd Street and 8th Avenue in Harlem. And I used to visit Captain Brown. He was my senpai at Seido Karate. And he really was a gentleman. He wasn't a caricature of masculinity. He was an excellent, refined human being. And he was a decorated combat veteran in Vietnam with the Marines. And he was a wounded soul. And he and I connected. And one night we were having a little dinner, and he wrote this. We're talking about, I was going through some stuff in my life. I'm not without wounds myself. And I asked him, Pat, if you had to lose everything but your health and your freedom, what would that be? And immediately he said his serenity. And that was not an answer that I would have given somebody if I was asked. It was serenity. I said, what? And he scribbled the Superman logo on the tablecloth, of the paper tablecloth, disposable tablecloth. And we were talking about cops and firemen and our relationship with the public and being first responders and being, this whole package. I said, Pat, how do you get serenity? He says, you get serenity from doing service. And I really almost jumped out of my skin because we just went through the merger. I lost my position in the union. I was back in uniform. I was functionally thrown out of work to back into uniform. I was broken. And I told him that of all these great things I did for people. He said to me, did you give to get? Because if you gave to get, you didn't do service. You made a deal. And deals go bad. People aren't bad. It's the deals they make that are bad. He looked me right in the eye and told me, it's not service. Don't mistake what you did for service. Don't fool yourself. I said, Pat, how do you do service? He says, you do service in silence. If what you do, you talk about, all people are going to talk about is the fact that you talk about what you do. Before I even said, how do you do it in silence, he interrupted me and he said, it's a sacrifice. So serenity comes from service that's done in silence involving a sacrifice. And he lifted that off of the Superman logo. That's the ultimate machete sign of power. And I learned that from him that night, that it's not going to get better, you're going to get better. And I mentioned that Lydia Martinez taught me that. Lydia was a first grade detective and an extraordinary woman, a power of example, who also died. And Pat Brown got killed September 11th. And his death really, give you an example of ego deflation. One night we were on a huge blaze on 150th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. And an inconsolable mother told us that her 5-year-old child was in the building. And we were able to get into the building, and the fire department was upstairs. And I knew Captain Brown was upstairs with his team, and we talked to the chief. Down the stairs, I'll never forget this, down the stairs comes Pat Brown. And he had matinee idol looks, and he had this little child in his arms crying. Pat Brown turned to a rookie firefighter. This kid looked like he had a month on the job, standing at the door. And Pat Brown handed this child to this young firefighter and pointed to an ambulance and said, now. And there was this young firefighter, brand new on the job, who ran out with this child to this phalanx of 20 deep on the sidewalk. The press, every apparatus in the city was there. The roar of applause. And Pat Brown made sure that young firefighter got the credit for that rescue. And all Pat Brown turned to me. He flashed me his megawatt smile. He winked and he said, no ego. Get rid of your ego has got you by the throat. What have you done? How are you helping people? Who did you help today? He got me off the pity pot. He helped me. He bonded and bandaged my emotional wounds. He got me back in the game. He said, you're here to help people. Yes. People, you're here to help people. You're here to help people. You're not here to know them. You're not here to cure them. You're not here to rescue them. You know, you didn't cause it. You can't control it, and you can't cure it. And that goes with social.
So our viewers know who you're talking about. He was not only a teacher, a black belt in this Sado karate that we were part of, but he was a captain in the fire department. He first responder on 9/11, and he gave his life that day. You mentioned Lydia Martinez, also a very good friend, and it breaks my heart, her death, and that speaks to the stress of policing, which, you know, we don't have time for in this program right now because we're at our time now. Jimmy, it is always uplifting for me. It's always uplifting to hear you, to listen to you, to learn from you. I know you're very busy in your schedule, but all I have to do is pick up the phone and you say yes. So you embody a lot of the qualities that we've talked about tonight. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to just give our dean a chance, if our dean has anything that she would like to say. Either one want to say anything. If not, that's okay. And or any attendees want to have any last words? There's our dean.
Thank you. This has been so wonderful. Sensei, I thank you so much for your time, your knowledge, your experience, and for your willingness to be able to share it with so many students that you have here on screen. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Dr. Kushner. There's Dr. Durham.
Sensei, thank you. This has been wonderful. I could listen to you for the rest of the night, and I can tell you enjoyed your work and you still enjoy it. I really appreciate you speaking to us tonight, taking the time. It's been really, really amazing.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you to both of you for your continued and undying support of everything that we do in the School of Criminal Justice. We are grateful to you. We're so grateful to David and Josh for their service and their sacrifice that they make. And there's Josh. He would let me tell you something, Jimmy. Josh and David, both of them, I see as instructors at the police academy any day of the week. I mean, that's what we're grooming them for. And they're seniors. They're going to be graduating in May. They are criminal justice majors, undergrads. David's going to be going on for the master's in criminal justice with us at NSU. And just for those who are also viewing us and attending, either viewing us on YouTube or attending now the webinar, hey, listen, we have a great master's program and we have an amazing PhD program at NSU. It's online completely, and we have real practitioners and academics who teach the program. So if you're interested, join. And Josh and David, my heart is breaking that we're going to be not being together, working together in the ways that we've been for the last few years. But I know that great things are coming for the both of you. And you have my love and support always. So thank you to all of us, all who have been viewing and watching us either on YouTube or here in the webinar. Thank you to Alpha Phi Sigma. There's David. Okay. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.
Dr. T. Brock has his hand raised in the attendees. I didn't know. I know we're almost out of time, but I figured.
Oh, we are almost out of time. Caleb, his first name is Caleb, and he's actually a master's student Master's in Criminal Justice, taking my police community relations class, Cohesion, Cooperation, and Communication. It's a brand new elective that we have in the master's program. And go ahead, Caleb.
Sir, I just wanted to say thank you for giving a lesson not only for criminal justice, but one that can be applied to nearly every service field and for general life.
Precisely.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Caleb,
Can I do a shameless plug for my company?
yes, please. Shameless. Go.
A station identification.
Yes.
I'm available at www.keisatsudojo.com. Common spelling. No, okay. It's Keisatsu, KEISATSUDOJO.com. The word Keisatsu in Japanese means police. Dojo, as you know, is a school. The more proper word for Keisatsu is a guardian or a protector. And the word dojo is the place of the way. So it's the place of the way of the protector. And if you care to reach out to me anytime, ladies and gentlemen.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you.
Yes. And anybody wants to get in touch with me can always get in touch with me, gt243@nova.edu. If you're interested in any upcoming programming that we have, upcoming webinars, don't forget April 12th, 7 o'clock, Dr. Catherine Ramslin, forensic expert, talking about Confessions of a Serial Killer. She did an amazing interview with the BTK killer and wrote a book about it. So she's going to be, she wrote 60 books actually, but she's going to be with us April 12th, 7 o'clock. If you need the webinar link for that, please reach out to me. Again, gt243@nova.edu. I want to thank everyone at NSU, everyone at Alpha Phi Sigma. Thank you, Sensei James Shanahan, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you next week.